Hello and welcome to my video all about how to make a garter stitch chevron pattern. The concept for this pattern is very simple. The chevron pattern itself is in garter stitch and the background is in stockinette stitch. This makes it a very easy pattern for beginners to follow because it only involves knit and purl stitches. The same concept can be used to design your own pattern fairly easily. All you need is graph paper, and you simply fill in all of the squares that you want to be raised in the final pattern, and these will be garter stitches, so will be made with knit stitches on both the front and the back of the knitting. Everything else, i.e. the background to your pattern, will be in stockinette stitch, so will be knit stitches on the front and purl stitches on the back of your knitting. This chart shows how the chevron pattern that I'm going to be knitting today would look on graph paper. All of the squares represent stitches. The number of squares going across the chart represents how many stitches need to be cast on to do one repeat of the pattern. Therefore, for this chevron pattern, we need to cast on a multiple of 6 stitches to complete it. The squares going from the top of the chart to the bottom represent the rows of stockinette and garter stitch. As you can see, there are 5 squares from top to bottom. However, each of these squares represents 2 rows. That's because each row of stockinette or garter stitch consists of 2 rows. Stockinette stitch consists of 1 row of knit stitches and 1 row of purl stitches, and garter stitch consists of 2 rows of knit stitches. So these 5 squares actually represent 10 rows. Therefore, this pattern repeats every 10 rows. The green squares represent the raised pattern, i.e. the garter stitches, and the white squares are the stockinette stitches. Okay, so let's get on with knitting the chevron garter stitch. The very first thing you need to do is cast on a multiple of 6 stitches. I, however, am going to be adding a garter stitch border. This is purely because otherwise the stockinette stitch will curl at the edges. So I'm going to be knitting a 4-stitch border all around this knitting sample. I want to knit 2 pattern repeats going across my knitting, so that gives me 6 times 2, which is 12, and then I add 8 more stitches for the border, which gives me 20 stitches. Obviously, if you don't want a border, you just need to cast on a multiple of 6 stitches. And now we're going to follow the 10-row pattern repeat. Because the front or right side rows of both garter stitch and stockinette stitch are formed with knit stitches, row 1 and every subsequent odd-numbered row is simply knit stitches. So row 1 is just knit stitches. For row number 2, we first knit 4 knit stitches, and that simply is to create the garter stitch border. On the pattern chart, we're currently knitting the very top row, which only consists of stockinette stitch. So now we're just going to purl across the row until we only have 4 stitches left. So row 2 is knit 4, and then purl across the row until you only have 4 stitches left, and then you're going to knit those last 4 stitches. Row 3 is of course just knit stitches, and then we're on to row 4. So as usual, we knit the first 4 stitches for the garter stitch border. Then we repeat the following 3 steps. Purl 3, knit 1, purl 2. And you repeat those 3 steps until you only have 4 stitches left. So that's purl 3, knit 1, purl 2. And then you simply knit those 4 remaining stitches. Row 5 is just knit stitches, and then row 6 is as follows. Knit 4 as usual, and then repeat the following 3 steps. Purl 2, knit 3, purl 1, and then you repeat those 3 steps until you only have 4 stitches remaining. So that's purl 2, knit 3, purl 1. And then you knit those 4 remaining stitches. Row 7 is just knit stitches, and then row 8 is as follows. Knit 4, and then repeat the following 4 steps. Purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, and you repeat those 4 steps until you only have 4 stitches remaining. So that's purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, and then you knit those remaining 4 stitches. Row 9 is just knit stitches, and then we're on to row 10, which is the final row in this pattern repeat. So you first knit 4 stitches, and then repeat the following 3 steps. Knit 2, purl 3, knit 1. So that's knit 2, purl 3, knit 1. Repeat that until you have just 4 stitches left, and then knit those stitches. And that completes the pattern repeat. You can then repeat these 10 rows for as long as you want. Once you've finished, remember to complete the garter stitch border by knitting 4 more rows of knit stitches at the end. I hope this video has been helpful to you, and thank you very much for watching.